Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. Dairy farming in Vermont is more than a pastoral tradition, it's an economic powerhouse. Despite the decrease in the number of dairy farms in Vermont, the dairy industry remains, as one dairy farmer once put it on Across the Fence, the goose that laid the golden egg every morning of every day. The Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets is kicking off a new campaign, Dairy Delivers, with new reporting on Vermont's dairy industry, and it's backed by research from the University of Vermont. In a minute, we'll hear from two of the leaders in this project, but first we have a video from the Agency of Ag that explains how dairy delivers.
The Vermont Dairy Delivers Report is coming out at a time that I think it's really critical that the state understand the value of the dairy sector to the state's economy. At $5.4 billion, our largest agricultural sector is a huge driver of how the land is used, how people are employed, the wages, the money that is circulating throughout the economy. And so really understanding and paying attention to how we can support it going forward, I think is something that I'm really excited to share with stakeholders in the government and across the state. A lot of the change in revenue has happened in the processing side. So we have more processing plants creating more products, and that production is going to more markets. We have about 113,000 cows in the state, which is on the lower side of where we've been recently, but those cows each are producing more milk efficiently with the same amount of feed and the same amount of resources. So overall, the sector is becoming much more effective at producing milk. Each cow contributes just over $8,600 worth of economic activity to the state. And that's looking at just the figures from the value of the milk production. And the longer we can keep a healthy cow in a farm, the better off it is not only for the farm, but for the environment. Even though farms are adopting automation and technology, those technologies need people to maintain them. While you may have somebody who is now working on some more specialized services on the farm, so maybe they were milking and now they've been trained to be more of a agronomy type position, or they're in a herd manager position. Whoever is doing the work of maintaining the systems that that farm has adopted to become more efficient and effective with their time and labor, that's another job that's created. The sector as a whole is evolving to support additional technology. So there's more robotic milkers, there's more robotic feed pushers and manure scrapers, there's a higher level of feed production and forage production, and all of that requires people with the knowledge and skills to both use those technologies and maintain them. You know, when you drive around, you can see farms. Sometimes you can't see them because they're on back roads, but you can't really understand the value of that particular farm or the farms in aggregate until you look at this report and understand just how much of an impact each of those farms is having, whether it's small or big in the Northeast Kingdom or in southern Vermont. They're all having a huge impact on the economy.
Joining me to further discuss the new report are Laura Ginsberg from the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, and Polly Erickson, a research professor at UVM and the director of the Food Systems Research Center. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you. And Laura, we'll start with you. What was the origin of this report?
So in 2014, the Vermont Agency of Agriculture put out the first report, Milk Matters. And after a decade and much change in the dairy sector, it felt like it was time to do a new version. So with the support of funds from the Vermont Dairy Promotion Council, which receives money from the checkoff program from every farmer in the state, we were able to redo the report with support from Polly's team.
Yeah, absolutely. Polly, how did you get involved?
So I joined the Food Systems Research Center, which is a new initiative at the University of Vermont about 2.5 years ago. And one of the first things that I did was reach out to various stakeholders, and the Agency of Ag, of course, was one of them. And it was just a matter of time, and they're like, we really want to update this report. And we think that the University of Vermont would be a great help. And I said, that looks like a great opportunity for us to engage with you and learn more about dairy in Vermont. So it was a happy marriage of need and availability.
Yeah, I love how that works out sometimes.
Yes.
And Laura, there are a lot of eye-popping numbers in this report when we're talking about the economy, employment, land use, and everything like that. And as somebody who leads the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center, what does this mean to you? What numbers really stand out?
So I get really excited by numbers, and these updated numbers in particular. The number of processors is something that is very unusual across the nation, that we've seen almost a doubling or more of processors over the past 10 years. And that's a real testament to consumers in the state wanting local products, a great regulatory environment, really passionate farmers and dairy processors who make those products. So that's one thing that I love to share. And I think also just the real economic growth over the past 10 years shows that even though farm numbers have declined and cow numbers are down, the industry still remains a powerhouse in the state and in the region.
And Polly, what UVM obviously is a land-grant university, and this research is a great example of how the university is a public good, but why involve your department in it?
So the Food Systems Research Center is a new, as I said, a fairly new institution at UVM, and we are trying to be very user-oriented in the research that we do. And so for me, the perfect kind of collaboration is for a key partner in the state, such as the agency, to say, we really want to update this report. We don't have the capacity to pull together and synthesize all of this data. Would you like to do it with us? Mm-hmm. And that was just, it was a no-brainer for us, exactly the kind of research that we want to get engaged in.
And Laura, we were talking numbers a minute ago, and let's go back to that. There are 440 dairy farms in Vermont, which is, as of the start of the year, I think you said that we increased a little bit since the report came out, so you're getting the active numbers, but if the trend continues, it'll be below 400 by the end of 2025. Is that a trend that you see continuing?
I think the farm number trends are something that people get concerned about, and rightfully so in many ways. I will say that this year has started to be against the trend line. So since the report has come out, we've only seen 3 farm closures this year, which is the slowest rate of farm closures in at least the past 10 years for the first quarter of the year. We've added 1 cow dairy, 1 goat dairy, and 3 sheep dairies since the report came out. So I think that's an exciting opportunity and just shows the real strength of the dairy economy in this state. And even though some of those farms are small, like each of those farms is an important, not only economic driver, but part of the food security picture for us, provides jobs, provides management of grazing lands and the active working landscape of the state. So really important to see those farm numbers increasing.
And you mentioned some other animals beyond cows, so this isn't just cow dairy, is that right?
That's right. So cow, goat, and sheep are all included in this report.
And Polly, the media does kind of like to fixate on that farm number, as Laura just mentioned. So does your research indicate that processors and producers might be a better judge of how the business is doing?
That's challenging. So I think the important thing is to know that Vermont dairy and New England dairy is region specific, and it's serving this region's community. And I think the diversification into goat and sheep is an exciting trend, and we'll see where that goes. But I also think it's really important that the number of processors has been increasing, because it's that value addition that will make dairy production thrive more in the new sort of, I think that was one of the comments that the secretary made when we were just starting this report out, is that it's not just raw milk anymore, it's the yogurt and the ice cream. And so people are drinking less raw milk perhaps, but they're eating more ice cream and dairy and cheese. And so it's very exciting for Vermont and New England to be capturing the value addition from those value-added products here in the region.
Yeah, that's incredible. And we're talking about fewer farms and fewer cows, but higher production. So what that doesn't, as somebody who doesn't work in the dairy industry, that doesn't really square to me. What's that number come from?
Right, so there's been this trend of fewer farms, fewer cows, but each cow is becoming more efficient in how they can convert the same amount of feed into more milk. And that's been a trend line over the past number of decades in dairy, where the real goal is for a cow to produce, more milk, be a healthy animal, long-lived, but eat less feed, consume less energy. And that's really what we're seeing. So milk production in the state has been relatively stable, even though cow numbers are declining. And just with a note on farm numbers, sometimes the farm numbers overall are a little bit, they can be a little misleading if you don't have all the nuance. So sometimes what we see is actually a farm may be milking at 2 operations, and to become more efficient, they can consolidate to 1, right? So it appears as a farm loss, but really it's just making somebody's life easier.
Sure, that makes sense. And this is a question for both of you, but Polly, I'll start with you. It's something that's been in the headlines a lot recently, is the impact of tariffs. Is that something that you guys can foresee an impact in the dairy industry, or is that something that we just have to wait and see?
Yeah, so my first thought about that was that feed availability might get affected. So I think it's more of an issue for farm inputs as opposed to because a lot of the dairy products are sold locally and regionally. But I'm a little worried about the feed.
Sure. Yeah. Is that something that you guys have been paying attention to at the Agency of Ag?
It is, absolutely. So with the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center, we provide a lot of grants for equipment, and particularly equipment for processors. The majority of that is produced in Europe. And we have heard from a number of folks who have grants from us who have equipment either in process or just loaded onto boats, who have said, you know, it's an extra $100,000, $50,000 that they weren't expecting to pay. So we don't quite know what the end result will be, but we know it is having impacts on people who are doing either plant expansions or equipment upgrades at this moment.
Sure. And Polly, let's go back to talking about the efficiency we talked about it a minute ago. Is seeing this trend of more for less sustainable?
I think to a certain point. So at some point, those productivity gains will start to level off. But I also like to think of that question in terms of who's managing our working landscapes, as Laura referred to. And so I mean, what am I trying to say? There's a balance between efficient and sustainable. And so we'll just sort of see where it seems like Vermont is still kind of adjusting to that, and we'll see where it goes. Yeah.
And Laura, is there a way that Vermont farmers can get more efficient, or is that something that you guys are trying to monitor?
I think there are ways that farms and processors continue to be more efficient. So for example, we still have people who milk into buckets, and then they they put the machine on the cow, the milk goes into a bucket, the bucket then gets poured into a bulk tank, right? That's not efficient use of anybody's time and labor, but it's what works for some small operations. If we move people from a bucket to a pipeline, they can milk more animals in less time, or they can just milk the same number of animals in less time, which means that they can spend their time doing other higher value things. The same with processors. Once you get equipment that's either more automated or has a larger volume, you can do more in the same amount of time. And that just makes the end product cheaper, and it really increases the value of your own labor.
All right, thank you so much for joining us today. And to read the Dairy Delivers Report for yourself, you can visit the website on your screen. And that takes care of our show for today. My thanks to the crew behind the scenes here at WCAX, who are always efficient. I'm Julie Whitney. This is Across the Fence. Have a good one.